The Socceroos are through to the round of 16 of the FIFA World Cup. Can you believe it? A date with Argentina lies ahead for Australia after a famous 1-0 win over Denmark thanks to Matthew Leckie's iconic, brilliant solo goal that put Australia through, I repeat, to the round of 16 of the FIFA World Cup. David Weiner with you for this special edition of Keep Up in Qatar, a podcast we've been bringing you for the last couple of weeks, joined by my colleagues David Davutovic and Tom Smithies. Gentlemen, we will be doing this for a few more days longer than we anticipated. What a night we have just witnessed.
It's not a dream, is it?
It's reality. It's incredible reality. It's intoxicating reality in a dry state.
I can't believe it. We didn't think we'd be in the World Cup at one stage. Getting out of the group was a long shot, beat Tunisia, etc. To be in this situation is just phenomenal. To be facing Argentina now in the round 16, unbelievable. Great scenes here, great scenes back at home. Can't wait to dissect it.
Tom, your initial reaction. We're a couple hours after the game. We've been filing some stories. We've been talking to people. We've been trying to come to terms with it. How did it happen?
It's really interesting to see momentum take over a team and when they really start to believe in each other. And you see it at tournaments where a good result, things start to click. You're in camp together the whole time. You become this family. And when teams really do believe in themselves, then suddenly they start to create crazy results and they create their own reality. And that's what happened with the Socceroos. They shouldn't really have beaten Tunisia on the form book. They certainly shouldn't have beaten Denmark on the form book. But they've got more points than any other Socceroos team has ever done at the group stage of a World Cup. And they're not shy of telling us that. They've created history. They've created their own kind of history. And it's fantastic to behold.
So let's dissect the game and then let's go through what that means and the consequences and what we've got to look forward to. And you mentioned the belief, Tom. Dave, I think probably 10 minutes in, I turned to you up at the Al Janoub Stadium and said, this could be a long night. Denmark came out in the front foot. Jensen was breaking forward and causing all sorts of problems in behind, forced a really good save from Matt Ryan. We were watching from our vantage point. Christian Eriksen was picking up some really, really interesting spaces and it looked like it was going to be a real challenge for the Socceroos. And then something changed. And all of a sudden we sensed and we turned to each other again and went, if Denmark haven't cashed in by now, we're just feeling a swing of momentum here. And this game's on. What changed?
What changed? It's a very good question. I mean, you start off at the 4th minute. Aziz Beich gets the yellow card. It was a nervy start for the Socceroos. On 3 or 4 occasions, 2 players went up and challenged for the same ball. Lack of communication, nerves. There was a few times where we broke down the flanks and crosses weren't getting past the first man. I remember Riley McGree in one instance, had all the time in the world and a few players in the box couldn't get it past the first man. I think they were nervy.
Graham Arnold said so.
Yeah. And they also hadn't trained. It was just about recovery over the last few days. So I think there was a little bit of rustiness there. Denmark were controlling things. They were dangerous, but they were dangerous without turning that into goal-scoring opportunities. And I think as the game wore on and the Socceroos' confidence rose and they got their foot on the ball and they eased into the game, then their confidence grew. To your point earlier, Tom, this is a team that has... confidence can do funny things to teams in this in World Cups, and this is a team that's greater than the sum of its parts, and they've just got this unbelievable self-belief, this brotherhood, and they just got better and better. At halftime, though, it was still nervy. To be honest, they couldn't wait for that halftime whistle to go. Halftime substitution happens. Bacchus comes on for Goodwin. Bit of a tactical tweak. McGree out on the left, and away we go.
And that worked. Keanu Bacchus looked like a player who felt very comfortable at that level. He played a really pivotal role. And talk about we thought something changed in the first half. Came out the second half, and you thought, we're in this. We're in this up to our eyeballs.
And the most important thing is they stopped Denmark playing. It was as if you could see the belief drain out of the Danish team, who I think had expected from what they were saying the other day that things were going to click. They played poorly against Tunisia, played relatively poorly against France, certainly in patches, and they expected this game to win. They expected to win this game. The Danish journalists were saying if they don't, it'll be a major surprise. And as Thomas Sorensen said, to keep up. 4 times out of 5, Denmark win that game, but this was the 5th game. And it was about belief. The Socceroos believed more, and you could see Denmark struggling to work out how to get into the game. They got into physical battles, they lost them, and the belief just grew and grew and grew. There was that horrible moment where we thought the strange referee had given a penalty when someone seemed to run into Harry Soutar. Luckily, he was offside, but then same player was then about to shoot on goal, and Soutar throws himself full length horizontal to block the shot in inimitable style. And
there is a fair bit of him, to be fair.
There is. He sort of unfurls himself and made that incredible block. And then you began, I think that was the 87th minute, and then you began to think, you know what, this could be their night.
And having the fans taken to Soutar, there was Harry Soutar chants going all evening. And I
had friends at pre-match function in a hotel, and they're just singing Soutar, Soutar, Soutar. They love him.
Well, Graham Arnold said after the game, he just put it straight out there. If Premier League clubs aren't banging down the door, or they'll have to race to bang down the door, or something like that, in the race for Harry Soutar, whose reputation has gone to another level during this tournament. As the tide turned, as belief grew, Tom, a big part of that, we're about to get to the Matthew Leckie goal, but Matthew Leckie was immense. Even prior to the goal, I felt that as Australia was struggling to get into the game in those early minutes, they did something really clever. Talk about game management. They slowed the game down a lot. Really started to make sure that any momentum that Denmark were going to get, Australia was going to make sure they punctuated that, and Denmark's rhythm slowed down from that if they were ever going to get any roll on there. And then the ability to start to take the pressure off started to happen. Aaron Moy started to be able to circulate the ball a little bit more, even if it was backwards. It just meant that we were able to get a foothold on it. But then what I thought was critical was Matt Leckie was a reliable outlet. Now, whether that was through his speed, through his movement, or just being able to shield the ball, suddenly the ball wasn't going back to a red shirt all the time. And I felt like the players grew off that. I thought they grew off the fact that his physical presence was starting to just allow the Socceroos just to get a little bit of their own foothold into the game.
Yeah, for sure. Look, he's a man mountain. He's 31, but he's still strong. He's come back to the A-League. He doesn't look any different to the player that was playing in the Bundesliga at the 2018 World Cup or back in the 2014 World Cup when he was sort of in between the second and the first division over in Germany. And you're right. I mean, he's done a power of work without the ball, certainly in that first game against France. He was putting in a massive shift as well earlier today. But unlike France, where he kind of got knocked off the ball a few times, which, again, we're talking about the French's physical superiority, he was unbelievable. And, Degenek, who came in at right back, we've used 3 right backs throughout this competition. He's more of your stay-at-home right back, so he wasn't as clean and crisp on the ball as, say, a Nathaniel Atkinson. So he was going solo. But look, the guys, and we'll get to the goal in a moment, but the guy has started 9 World Cup games, equaling the Socceroos record today, along with Matty Ryan. They've equalled Bresciano and Cahill, I think it was. After the first game against France, he had played every minute of every game. Game 2 comes off in the 85th minute. Today, he comes off in the 88th minute. A few unbelievable shifts there, and he had the ice packs on his calves at the end of the game, absolutely knackered. But he'll be there again against Argentina, and he'll be giving them a headache.
The goal, which from an individual level and a team level was another outstanding moment in this tournament. An iconic moment in Australian football history.
Now, I haven't actually watched it back since it happened because there was so many more things happened after that, and we've been running around like crazy interviewing players and things, so I haven't watched it back. But Harry Soutar, Mitch Duke, Riley McGree, Matt Leckie, goal. That was it, wasn't it? Simple as that.
And the goals have all been, aside from the slight deflection for the second one, all really beautiful, clean build-ups, haven't they?
Yeah, and this one was a hallmark of... Graham Arnold said he didn't want Australia to have the reputation of the fighting kangaroo. You scored this goal through quality combination play. Harry Soutar, who his evaluation has gone up because of his ability to play with the ball. That ball out to Duke, the stereotypical Arnie battering ram. No, he came short, got the ball, held it up, collected it, played it off.
Yeah. Just as he did for the goal against Tunisia.
That's it. That's it. McGree, who we talked about with Hrustic, what did you say all the time, Dave, that his quality was being able to move forward and play forward? He did. He was moving forward and looked up and saw the run that Leckie made from outside right across the left before.
So basically, it was, I think, a Danish corner. Came from the right-hand side. Leckie was in his defensive, the edge of his defensive penalty area when he started that run. On the right-hand side, he's run diagonally opposite. He's gone about 50, 60 metres before McGree has released him at the absolute perfect time. He was just inside his own half. A second later, and he's probably offside. Plays him beautifully. Leckie's away. He's got 2 Danish players in front of him. He stops, props, has a look if he's got any support. There was nothing. He's like, shit, I've got to go myself here. And he went inside, cut outside, and Jamie McLaren said it himself. He had absolutely no right to score that goal. The way he's kind of contoured his body and whacked it with his non-preferred left foot, wrong-footed Schmeichel, far post, inside the upright. You pointed out, Tom, that Riley McGree was celebrating before it went into the net.
There's a fabulous picture of McGree. I reckon, we're all Riley McGree today. You can see Matt Leckie's charging on and McGree is just running next to him with his hands on his head. He just can't quite believe it.
And for any listeners not totally captivated by Davudovic's description there, he is available to reenact the goal at any given time.
We all were very excited today, let's be honest. But it was a great finish. The finishing hasn't been the hallmark of Matt Leckie's game. That was his first World Cup goal. It's been the power, the energy. He said himself he's had a few chances to score. I remember Ange Postecoglou's first game, they played him up front as the number 9. Then he played wing back. He's always been there. He's been ever present, but this is his moment.
And we witnessed tonight, and all the Australians at home that watched it with family at home or at Fed Square or wherever, we witnessed a moment now that goes down in time in Australian football and Australian sport. We talk about the Schwarzer penalty, the Aloisi penalty, the Cahill goals in Kaiserslautern, the Serbia game, Gary Kuehl. Now it's Matt Leckie against Denmark in a goal that he, as you said, Dave, he had no right to score. A player from the Isuzu Youth A-League who took on, how many was it? 13 Danish players in the box. I don't know what will come at the time. Maybe 2 or 3. Definitely Joachim Mahler and Kasper Schmeichel, and stood them up and put it away. There will be kids reenacting this move for the next weeks, months, and years in playgrounds all across the country.
The context of that goal, in the moments around it, the hours around it, and the years around it are all so important. In the seconds around it, you could see Denmark suddenly really fearing. Kasper Schmeichel ran to the referee because the Aussies were celebrating for too long, and he was berating the referee, let's get this game restarted. And the ref's like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm
surprised he didn't give a penalty the way the game was going.
Yeah. And but then suddenly the belief in the Australian team, because of course they just found out that Tunisia had scored, and the whole equation had changed again, and suddenly a draw wasn't going to be enough. And the funny thing is that the news came from Tony Vidmar on the bench, the assistant coach to Rani Moulinstein, the other assistant coach that Tunisia had scored. He turned to speak to tell Graham Arnold, didn't have a chance because then Australia scored. So Moulinstein then turns to Arnie, and it's like, well, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is Tunisia scored, but the good news is we've scored. Then suddenly they got Milos Degenek to do a quick huddle and get the players in to say, Tunisia are ahead, we have to keep a clean sheet. Except the problem was most of the players didn't believe him because he's such a practical joker. They all thought he was taking the piss. And in fact, Jackson Irvine in the back of his head is thinking, this is a really good motivational strategy. I mean, obviously they haven't really scored, but better to tell us that they have. Yeah. What they have really?
I mean, so France named the weakened side and Tunisia did take that lead. I'm fascinated by the psychology because Matt Leckie said he didn't have the chance to see that they had gone ahead. And you wouldn't have because the table went up and seriously Australia scored within 90 seconds of that. He wouldn't have seen it. And I think all Australians should be grateful that they didn't because I can't imagine that the panic that would have set in if 5, 10, 15 minutes had gone on and they were searching for that goal to go ahead. What a relief that it actually happened instantaneously, and then it was a matter of hanging on. Another word on the goal as well is the A-Leagues aspect that I think we've talked about a fair bit on this show, but now you look at it and you go, we've had Craig Goodwin supply Mitchell Duke. We had Matt Leckie today, who's come back to the Isuzu Youth A-League in his prime, and he's gone and scored a goal that's going to put Australia through to a game with Lionel Messi in Argentina in the round of 16. I don't think we can underestimate the power, the value of that moment and what that can do for, for football in general.
When Matt Leckie 15 or so months ago signed for Melbourne City, I think a lot of people in their minds thought, well, that could be Socceroos' career done. He's coming back to the A-League. He's waving the white flag here, coming from Hertha Berlin, Bundesliga club. And he did have a really tough start. A lot of that was down to COVID. We were still in lockdown, the sort of post-COVID aftermath. His wife is from Germany, had a young family. I think she was having some issues settling as well. By the end of the season, he was rocking and rolling, but this season he's made a fantastic start and really interesting dynamic in that front three as well. You've at Melbourne City, you've got McLaren, you've got Marco Tilio, Andrew Naboot, etc. So this season he's timed his run to perfection, but when you look at his Socceroos performances, at this World Cup, they've been immense. But to your point, a massive feather in the A-League's cap. Jamie McLaren spoke about it really well after the game and felt he was a little bit stiff not to perhaps get on the score sheet as well, because at the end, Kasper Schmeichel was going up for the corners and he thought Matty Ryan could have, sent a few long bombs down and he could have, could have put the icing on the cake and made it 2-0. But like you said, Craig Goodwin, again, he played 45 today, had a good shift. Leckie, McLaren, a bunch of other guys who've been in the A-League really recently. Keanu Bacchus this time last year is in the A-League. He comes on at half-time. I don't think too many people would have predicted that substitution. Plays in an unfamiliar position, virtually on the right side of midfield, right wing. His shift was unbelievable. Kai Rolls again playing a fantastic game.
That was his best game
last year.
That was his best game of the tournament.
Solid.
Yeah. Still
Still a little bit nervy, but you can see every game he's just getting better and better. And that partnership with Soutar and Aziz Beich on the left, he's growing, and that's his position now.
And by the end, Aziz Beich looked like Kylian Mbappe taking on players down the left.
And nearly
the
scored
left
goal
wing.
of the tournament.
He really nearly did.
Slalom him in from the left and then did all the hard work and then passed it to the goalkeeper.
No, I think then he got the deflection off himself and he didn't get the corner. The crowd was really interesting tonight. It wasn't the best atmosphere we've ever been in, but it was so tense. It actually made it quite quiet. But that was fascinating because we could hear Matt Ryan barking. And it was at a point in the game where the risk would have been that Australia had started to drop through to Denmark's possession. I think it might have been 60% at that point that they had. And Australia starts to squeeze up. We could hear him up. Really interesting. And that made a difference, Tom. That there was definitely a concerted effort. Arnie was off the bench pushing the team forward to squeeze back up on Denmark. And in the end, even Kasper Hjulmand, the Denmark boss, referenced it. Denmark ended up in a fight. They ended up in an emotional scrap. And he said that's the one thing you don't want to do against Australia.
The atmosphere really was weird because it didn't drive either team on. There were 40-something thousand seater stadium. There was a pocket of Danish fans. Occasionally you heard them, but apparently most of the Danish fans have stayed at home as a boycott. There was a reasonable number of Australian fans, lots of, you'd call them neutrals, who didn't do anything, didn't say anything. And so at times you could, as you say, literally hear the players shouting, and neither side was feeding off the energy of the crowd. They were getting more nervy than anything. That's what became that sort of slugfest of who's going to just keep their nerve and see this through.
Really interesting tactical point to round this aspect up that Graham Arnold mentioned. And I think we agree that the job done in terms of the physicality and holding the ball really improved as the game went on. Nervous in the early exchanges. Christian Eriksen nullified as the game went on. Those pockets of space that he was picking up started to sort of close down a little bit. Jackson Irvine was finding his way around the field a lot more than early in the game. He raised a fascinating point. I didn't realise that Socceroos won 7 from 8 in Qatar in recent times. And he said that once he knew that he would get a message out to the team to remember about Denmark's ploy to get him behind. Like we saw Matt Ryan have to make a save because they were combining and getting behind really easy. He said from that moment he thought we're going to be all right because of the same thing that happened with Peru. Where in these air-conditioned stadiums, these sides aren't used to the conditions of the ball skidding off the surface. And in hindsight, you think about it, how many goal kicks did Australia get? Where Soutar was able to shepherd it out, and you're wondering, how is a team with this quality having this lack of incision in the final third. Really interesting point.
Who generally are very precision passers of the ball. It was really interesting watching Eriksen at kickoff. He sort of sat in that the usual deep lying midfield role that he's played in the first 2 games, but then within a minute or two, it was almost a deception tactic. He went forward. He was playing in that number 10 role, and we're watching him. He was picking up those pockets of space in between the lines, and we thought, this is dangerous for Australia. He's getting into some really dangerous positions, but they backed themselves in. They didn't man mark him per se. It was, between Moy and Irvine and also McGree. To sort of look after him or block his space or passing lanes when he did drop a little bit deeper. But look, Denmark really, Matt Ryan, I can't think of a save that,
not after the Jensen save in the 12th minute. No.
So as much as, they had, they dominated possession and were looking good and kind of getting into the, the front third, the Socceroos defence was really rock solid. It is getting late. But Degenek, we pointed out, he was fantastic coming in, just really strong. Made some mistakes, but he sort of dusts it off and gets on with it, where maybe one of the younger players would get a little bit more nervy, a la a Nathaniel Atkinson. But look, there were so many great performances. Again, Beach, to get a yellow in the 4th minute, he really had to compose himself for the rest of that game. That experience told. He has been unbelievable this World Cup. His engines, even at the end, just continually going up and down, and down. He's been great. And again, just there was the substitution towards the end. Bailey Wright comes in. They go to a back 3 or a back 5-4-1 defensively. When they had the ball, it was a 3-4-2-1. Again, Arnie, Rene Meulenstein, Tony Vidmar, absolute credit to them. They got it absolutely spot on tactically.
And the really heartbreaking thing is that Bailey Wright came on, did this. The photos of him celebrating on the pitch, walked off, picked up his phone, and there's a text message from his wife to say that her mother is seriously ill, to the point where Bailey Wright said he didn't even know if she was still with us. He was crying. And typical Bailey Wright, he came and spoke to the journalists, even though he was in tears, and said he hadn't told anybody. He hadn't even told the coaching staff, and he'd just been dealing with the fact he obviously knew how seriously ill his mother-in-law was. But he said that they insisted that he come so that he could see out his dream. And he got onto the pitch, he got World Cup minutes, and then came off to that. It's a cruel world sometimes.
It is, and it shows you the depth and layers and the stories and the human aspect. We've spoken about it going into this game. How much this means on an individual level to all these players and what they've had to do and go through, and even in real time, to achieve this success. And the sacrifices you and your family make to get to this level. This achievement is, we're all celebrating, the country is celebrating, but on a human level, what these guys have done and where they are in their lives right now, and that is a cruel aspect. But it just shows you that each one of these players has got a lot that is built up to this moment right now.
That's heartbreaking. Everyone's got their own personal story. I mean, if you look at Bailey's football story alone, I mean, the fact that he's here is a massive credit to him. Left the country at a young age, etc. But that's heartbreaking. And in a team like this, where they are a band of brothers, you can just see that camaraderie in there. I mean, that could be something that really galvanises this team. Moving forward into the round of 16, and who knows, hopefully beyond. In this tragic circumstance.
Moving forward to the round of 16, which it's still hard to fathom that we're saying that. What you guys were in the players area? I was in the press conference. What was some of the mood and reaction from the players? Otherwise, was it excitement, disbelief, shock? Was it game mode? We're going to recover? Because really important to make this point. There are literally 2 days between these games. By the time we recover in the morning and wash this all up, it's almost match day -1. So what did you sense from the players down there?
Well, Miloš Degenek said they could win it.
The World Cup or the round of 16?
The World Cup.
That's before he knew they were facing Argentina in the round of 16, yeah?
I'm not sure that would have changed what he said, to be honest. Some of the others did row back a little bit. Mitch Duke's response was, when asked about that comment, was a game at a time. We can't get ahead of ourselves, but we back ourselves to beat anybody. They're full of confidence. They're not in any way overawed. They're knackered. They're wiped out. They're emotional. but they're buzzing. They're on a high. They're playing on and living on adrenaline at the moment. They won't train. They'll hardly kick a ball between now and Argentina. They will rest, sleep, recover, and go through tactical analysis of Argentina. But you could put them in front of anybody, and they will back themselves. They'll run at them and see what happens.
It was all of those emotions, adjectives that you mentioned. They're so focused, though. They are so bloody focused. It's remarkable. Like, they acknowledge the enormity of the occasion as they did against Tunisia. It's great. But then they kind of move on and say there's still a job to do. We've got this unbelievable self-belief. Even someone like Riley McGree, who's, 22, 23 years old, just the maturity and, just didn't seem too fazed by, the occasion, the fact that he'd, set up the match-winning goal in this World Cup game. It was great to see. Again, a credit to Graham Arnold. But Aziz Beich was really interesting to speak to. He was also really, really balanced. Said they'd enjoy tonight. Would stay off social media as instructed by Graham Arnold.
They have not stayed off social media.
We've seen a few likes across the journey. But look... It was interesting listening to Aziz. He said, I asked him, what did Arnie say to you boys afterwards? He said, he was in the rooms telling us to sort of, to calm down, enjoy it, but focus. And then you got Martin Boyle on crutches on one knee, and he was jumping around. He thought he was going to do his other ACL. I think Arnie was struggling to keep it together, but he was just saying it's a credit to Martin Boyle, who doesn't need to be here, but he's been so important to this team. And again, it's that kind of light shade where Arnie has got pretty serious, during this World Cup campaign. And someone like Martin Boyle, who the players just love. They've all got around him. We heard him the other day in the pre-match press conference. And Matty Leckie's his, they're still roommates, and Leckie's the one sort of, pushing him around on the wheelchair and helping him in
Showering
the shower.
him.
And so
PG.
there you go. So I'm sure Martin Boyle will take credit for the Leckie goal.
A journalist from The Sun in the press conference said to Arnie, come on, you're not give them anything? And Arnie just held up his bottle of water. I said, that's it. But in all seriousness, it's because of the turnaround. And even, normally the next day after a performance, the media gets some time with the players. But there's such a juggle now because the high performance aspect of it. The players now need to have they can, even so much as the players not being on their feet for a 45-minute hour media op is something that precise detail is going to come into the play in the next 48 hours.
2 days after a game is when players are sorest, and then when you're playing back-to-back sort of, games every 3-4 days, you're obviously getting sorer and sorer. So there's going to be some really sore bodies come Saturday or Sunday morning Australian time when they're due to face Argentina. It'll all be rest and recovery. There'll be maybe a tactical session in the lead up to that. But we'll obviously see how they pull up over the next few days. But if I had to make a call now, I reckon there will be a few changes. I just reckon there'll be one or two blokes that won't be able to back up. They've put in a few enormous shifts.
We'll get into the detail of the Argentina game specifically over the next couple of days. But to conclude, and by the way, just the only part of the game we haven't referenced is the last 10 minutes, which was just bonkers. 10 minutes plus 6 minutes stoppage time where we all had our hearts in our mouths, but once again, the side was resilient, threw their bodies into everything, and just showed that it wasn't going to happen. Wasn't going to happen. This was theirs for the taking. So two matches where it's been absolute heart in mouth, setting up this tie. But it is Argentina that falls Australia's way. Lionel Messi, I mean, all as I said, we'll go into detail, but your initial reaction, guys, to the fact that Australia's reward for this is a match that will have the entire football planet watching.
The game the Group C almost came down to a drawing of lots. There were two yellow cards away from Poland and Mexico being inseparable on any format, and so there were people agitating for it. And then there was, I think, one of the Polish players was running around like a psychopath, and there was great disappointment when he got taken off because he was the one most likely to tip the balance. Argentina. I mean, just Messi captivating. As you say, everybody will be watching. We've seen the focus on Argentina at this tournament. Every one of their games sells out in seconds. And now they're playing Australia.
They're the most popular team with the local Qataris here. We've noticed that from the get-go. There's Messi murals, there's Diego Maradona murals. They've had a pretty strong connection with Qatar over a really long period of time. I think they've played quite a few games here over the journey as well, so that might nullify, Australia's quote-unquote home ground advantage. But, yeah, 2-0 win. Lionel Messi, he is human. He had a penalty saved by Wojciech Szczesny. But Alexis McAllister and Julian Alvarez of Man City scoring the goals to put them ahead. They've looked, they lost their first game against Saudi Arabia. It was kind of panic stations then, but they've been pretty controlled and measured in their last 2 games. From what I saw today, they were pretty comfortable with that win. So it's going to be a fascinating game. We've played Argentina a few times over the journey. I think most recently in 2007 at the MCG when Messi did play. I think I remember that being Skoko and a few of that golden generation's last game. Played in 2005 in the Confeds Cup, and perhaps most famously 93. Those well, certainly in my lifetime, those World Cup qualifiers when Diego Maradona made the comeback and really inspired them over the line when they had a dodgy qualifying campaign in South America.
Well, one of the interesting themes from this is how many Olyroos Graham Arnold has blooded. Now, who did the Olyroos beat at the Olympics?
Argentina. I like it. With Marco Tilio scoring, and we haven't seen
1-0 to
Arnie.
Food for thought to take us into the next couple of days. Gents, I think we'll call it there. A momentous night. I've got one more for us. One more for us, because we're going to put this out to the fans, I reckon, over the next couple of days.
Yep.
Where does tonight stack up? Maybe in the cold light of day we can think about it a little bit more, but we have to ask that question. Only to contextualise, even Tom, because I know that you don't like to split great moments, but even just to contextualise it, this moment, this day that we've just enjoyed, is now in that conversation. We now have another moment to put in the museum of Australian football. And, whether or not we need to say it's the greatest or not, we don't have to. But it's one that we'll be talking about forever.
Absolutely. It's another great moment up there with Kaiserslautern, with Stuttgart, with 2005 Stadium Australia. It's another great moment. And one of the reasons I don't want to sort of say that's the best and disregard the others is because...
You love sitting on the fence?
Because we want to create this catalogue of football moments, of football memorabilia, of football love and understanding. And the more that people realise the history that's involved and the way this goes back decades, the more involved they get in this game, instead of, that's just the key moment you need to know about. It's the broad tapestry that we want people to fall in love with.
Agreed. We as a sport are pretty poor at acknowledging our past. So I think Tom is spot on. I don't like agreeing with you a hell of a lot, Tom, but I will on this occasion. Going back to, even further, but, in a World Cup context, Rally Rasic in that 1974 team, and then, 32 years of heartache, and then obviously that famous come-from-behind win in Kaiserslautern where after 80 minutes we're down 1-0 and, Tim Cahill and John Aloisi inspire us to a famous 3-1 win, and we're under pressure getting those stories in on deadline. But, yeah, tonight was extraordinary. The fact that they've made history, 2 wins, 6 points, clean sheets for the first time in World Cup history, with a team that was written off, with a team of players who we've discussed, not many of them playing in the big 5 leagues, 2 of them and only one of them playing regularly in Aiden Rustic, a team that, at one stage looked like they weren't going to qualify, Arnie almost getting sacked. The fact that we're sitting here, they've knocked off Denmark, top 10 team in the world, Euro semi-finalists, it's a bloody extraordinary feat.
And Tom's used the word tapestry at 2:30 in the morning, which is quite
not even had a beer yet.
Beautiful achievement. You hit the nail on the head, Dave. There may be, and again, we don't have to say the greatest at all. We don't have to go down those pathways. But for this side, this group of players to have eclipsed the golden generation, there's been all that talk about new generation. The fact is, this group of players have gone and achieved what the absolute pin-up of Australian football wasn't able to do. That, for me, just defies belief. The 2 clean sheets in a group that is really tough. You add this up and you go, wow. We were coming here hoping for a goal. We've got out of the group. It is just simply extraordinary, and we will be celebrating that and dealing with that over the next couple of days as we preview the Argentina game. Gentlemen, that's all we've got time for tonight or this morning. Thank you for sharing the experience with us once again.
Go the Socceroos!
to everyone listening. Thank you for your company throughout the World Cup. We'll be doing it for a little bit longer, it seems. Enjoy the World Cup action as we build towards Sunday in Australia at 6 a.m. I think the kickoff is 10 p.m.
Eastern
here.
time.
Yeah, Eastern time, of course. Until the next episode of Keep Up in Qatar, enjoy your World Cup action.